Hello and welcome. Tonight, we step gently into one of the most enchanting fairy tales ever told. There's nothing you need to do right now. Just settle in, breathe a little slower, and let the day drift away. If this space brings you comfort, you're always welcome to stay by liking the video or subscribing, but only if it truly feels right to you. I love knowing where these stories travel, so if you wish, leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time the night has reached for you. Now lower the lights, let a soft sound fill the room, and allow yourself to be carried slowly, calmly into tonight's story. The Elves. First story. A shoemaker, by no fault of his own, had become so poor that at last he had nothing left but leather for one pair of shoes. So in the evening he cut out the shoes, which he wished to begin to make the next morning. And as he had a good conscience, he lay down quietly in his bed, commended himself to God, and fell asleep. In the morning, after he had said his prayers and was just going to sit down to work, the two shoes stood quite finished on his table. He was astounded and knew not what to say to it. He took the shoes in his hands to observe them closer, and they were so neatly made that there was not one bad stitch in them, just as if they were intended as a masterpiece. Soon after, a buyer came in, and as the shoes pleased him so well, he paid more for them than was customary, and with the money, the shoemaker was able to purchase leather for 2 pairs of shoes. He cut them out at night, and next morning was about to set to work with fresh courage. But he had no need to do so, for when he got up, they were already made, and buyers also were not wanting, who gave him money enough to buy leather for 4 pairs of shoes. The following morning, too, he found the 4 pairs made, and so it went on constantly. What he cut out in the evening was finished by the morning, so that he soon had his honest independence again, and at last became a wealthy man. Now it befell that one evening, not long before Christmas, when the man had been cutting out, he said to his wife before going to bed, "What think you, if we were to stay up tonight to see who it is that lends us this helping hand?" The woman liked the idea and lighted a candle, and then they hid themselves in a corner of the room behind some clothes which were hanging up there, and watched. When it was midnight, 2 pretty little naked men came, sat down by the shoemaker's table, took all the work which was cut out before them, and began to stitch and sew and hammer so skillfully and so quickly with their little fingers that the shoemaker could not turn away his eyes for astonishment. They did not stop until all was done and stood finished on the table, and they ran quickly away. Next morning, the woman said, "The little men have made us rich, and we really must show that we are grateful for it. They run about so and have nothing on and must be cold. I'll tell thee what I'll do. I will make them little shirts and coats and vests and trousers, and knit both of them a pair of stockings, and do thou too, make them 2 little pairs of shoes." The man said, "I shall be very glad to do it." And one night, when everything was ready, they laid their presents all together on the table instead of the cut-out work, and then concealed themselves to see how the little men would behave. At midnight, they came bounding in and wanted to get to work at once, but as they did not find any leather cut out, but only the pretty little articles of clothing, they were at first astonished, and then they showed intense delight. They dressed themselves with the greatest rapidity, putting the pretty clothes on and singing, "Now we are boys so fine to see, why should we longer cobblers be?" Then they danced and skipped and leapt over chairs and benches. At last they danced out of doors. From that time forth they came no more, but as long as the shoemaker lived, all went well with him, and all his undertakings prospered. Second story. There was once a poor servant girl who was industrious and cleanly, and swept the house every day, and emptied her sweepings on the great heap in front of the door. One morning, when she was just going back to her work, she found a letter on this heap, and as she could not read, she put her broom in the corner and took the letter to her master and mistress. And behold, it was an invitation from the Elves, who asked the girl to hold a child for them at its christening. The girl did not know what to do, but at length, after much persuasion, and as they told her that it was not right to refuse an invitation of this kind, she consented. Then 3 elves came and conducted her to a hollow mountain where the little folks lived. Everything there was small, but more elegant and beautiful than can be described. The baby's mother lay in a bed of black ebony, ornamented with pearls. The coverlids were embroidered with gold. The cradle was of ivory, the bath of gold. The girl stood as godmother, and then wanted to go home again. But the little elves urgently entreated her to stay 3 days with them. So she stayed and passed the time in pleasure and gaiety, and the little folks did all they could to make her happy. At last she set out on her way home. Then first they filled her pockets quite full of money, and after that they led her out of the mountain again. When she got home, she wanted to begin her work, and took the broom, which was still standing in the corner, in her hand, and began to sweep. Then some strangers came out of the house, who asked her who she was and what business she had there. And she had not, as she thought, been 3 days with the little men in the mountains, but 7 years, and in the meantime her former masters had died. Third story. A certain mother's child had been taken away out of its cradle by the elves, and a changeling with a large head and staring eyes, which would do nothing but eat and drink, laid in its place. In her trouble, she went to her neighbor and asked her advice. The neighbor said that she was to carry the changeling into the kitchen, set it down on the hearth, light a fire, and boil some water in 2 eggshells, which would make the changeling laugh, and if he laughed, all would be over with him. The woman did everything that her neighbor bade her. When she put the eggshells with water on the fire, the imp said, "I am as old now as the Wester forest, but never yet have I seen anyone boil anything in an eggshell." And he began to laugh at it. Whilst he was laughing, suddenly came a host of little elves, who brought the right child, set it down on the hearth, and took the changeling away with them. The Jew Among Thorns. There was once a rich man who had a servant who served him diligently and honestly. He was every morning the first out of bed and the last to go to rest at night. And whenever there was a difficult job to be done, which nobody cared to undertake, he was always the first to set himself to it. Moreover, he never complained, but was contented with everything and always merry. When a year was ended, his master gave him no wages, for he said to himself, "That is the cleverest way, for I shall save something, and he will not go away, but stay quietly in my service." The servant said nothing, but did his work the 2nd year, as he had done it the 1st. And when at the end of this likewise he received no wages, he made himself happy, and still stayed on. When the 3rd year also was past, the master considered, put his hand in his pocket, but pulled nothing out. Then at last the servant said, "Master, for 3 years I have served you honestly. Be so good as to give me what I ought to have, for I wish to leave and look about me a little more in the world." "Yes, my good fellow," answered the old miser. "You have served me industriously, and therefore you shall be cheerfully rewarded." And he put his hand into his pocket, but counted out only 3 farthings, saying, "There you have a farthing for each year. That is large and liberal pay, such as you would have received from few masters." The honest servant, who understood little about money, put his fortune into his pocket, and thought, now that I have my purse full, why need I trouble and plague myself any longer with hard work? So on he went up hill and down dale, and sang and jumped to his heart's content. Now it came to pass that as he was going by a thicket, a little man stepped out and called to him, "Whither away, merry brother? I see you do not carry many cares." "Why should I be sad?" answered the servant. "I have enough. 3 years' wages are jingling in my pocket." "How much is your treasure?" the dwarf asked him. "How much? 3 farthings sterling all told." "Look here," said the dwarf. "I am a poor, needy man. Give me your 3 farthings. I can work no longer, but you are young and can easily earn your bread." And as the servant had a good heart and felt pity for the old man, he gave him the 3 farthings, saying, "Take them in the name of heaven. I shall not be any the worse for it." Then the little man said, "As I see you have a good heart, I grant you 3 wishes, 1 for each farthing. They shall all be fulfilled." "Aha," said the servant, "you are one of those who can work wonders. Well, and if it is to be so, I wish first for a gun which shall hit everything that I aim at. Secondly, for a fiddle which when I play on it shall compel all who hear it to dance. Thirdly, that if I ask a favor of anyone, he shall not be able to refuse it." "All that shall you have," said the dwarf, and put his hand into the bush, and only think, there lay a fiddle and gun all ready, just as if they had been ordered. These he gave to the servant, and then said to him, "Whatever you may ask at any time, no man in the world shall be able to deny you, heart alive." "What can one desire more?" said the servant to himself, and went merrily onwards. Soon afterwards he met a Jew with a long goat's beard, who was standing listening to the song of a bird which was sitting up at the top of a tree. "Good heavens!" he was exclaiming, "that such a small creature should have such a fearfully loud voice. If it were but mine, if only someone would sprinkle some salt upon its tail." "If that is all," said the servant, "the bird shall soon be down here." And taking aim, he pulled the trigger, and down fell the bird into the thorn bushes. "Go, you rogue," he said to the Jew, "and fetch the bird out for yourself." "Oh," said the Jew, "leave out the rogue, my master, and I will do it at once. I will get the bird out for myself, as you really have hit it." Then he lay down on the ground and began to crawl into the thicket. When he was fast among the thorns, the good servant's humor so tempted him that he took up his fiddle and began to play. In a moment, the Jew's legs began to move and to jump into the air, and the more the servant fiddled, the better went the dance. But the thorns tore his shabby coat from him, combed his beard, and pricked and plucked him all over the body. "Oh dear," cried the Jew, "what do I want with your fiddling? Leave the fiddle alone, master. I do not want to dance." But the servant did not listen to him and thought, You have fleeced people often enough now, the thorn bushes shall do the same to you." And he began to play over again, so that the Jew had to jump higher than ever, and scraps of his coat were left hanging on the thorns. "Oh, woe's me," cried the Jew. "I will give the gentleman whatsoever he asks, if only he leaves off fiddling a purse full of gold." "If you are so liberal," said the servant, "I will stop my music. But this I must say to your credit, that you dance to it so well that it is quite an art." And having taken the purse, he went his way. The Jew stood still and watched the servant quietly until he was far off and out of sight. And then he screamed out with all his might, "You miserable musician, you beer-house fiddler, wait till I catch you alone. I will hunt you till the soles of your shoes fall off. You ragamuffin, just put 5 farthings in your mouth, and then you may be worth 3 halfpence," and went on abusing him as fast as he could speak. As soon as he had refreshed himself a little in this way and got his breath again, he ran into the town to the justice. "My lord judge," he said, "I have come to make a complaint. See how a rascal has robbed and ill-treated me on the public highway. A stone on the ground might pity me. My clothes all torn, my body pricked and scratched, my little all gone, with my purse, good ducats, each piece better than the last. For God's sake, let the man be thrown into prison. Why, Abactafar am I." "Was it a soldier," said the judge, "who cut you thus with his saber?" "Nothing of the sort," said the Jew. "It was no sword that he had, but a gun hanging at his back and a fiddle at his neck. The wretch may easily be known." So the judge sent his people out after the man, and they found the good servant who had been going quite slowly along, and they found too the purse with the money upon him. As soon as he was taken before the judge, he said, "I did not touch the Jew nor take his money. He gave it to me of his own free will that I might leave off fiddling, because he could not bear my music." "Heaven defend us," cried the Jew. "His lies are as thick as flies upon the wall." But the judge also did not believe his tale and said, "This is a bad defense. No Jew would do that." And because he had committed robbery on the public highway, he sentenced the good servant to be hanged. As he was being led away, the Jew again screamed after him, "You vagabond, you dog of a fiddler, now you are going to receive your well-earned reward." The servant walked quietly with the hangman up the ladder, but upon the last step he turned round and said to the judge, "Grant me just one request before I die." "Yes, if you do not ask your life," said the judge. "I do not ask for life," answered the servant, "but as a last favor, let me play once more upon my fiddle." The Jew raised a great cry of, "Murder, murder, for goodness' sake, do not allow it, do not allow it." But the judge said, "Why should I not let him have this short pleasure? It has been granted to him, and he shall have it." However, he could not have refused on account of the gift which had been bestowed on the servant. Then the Jew cried, "Oh, woe's me, tie me fast," while the good servant took his fiddle from his neck and made ready. As he gave the first scrape, they all began to quiver and shake the judge, his clerk, and the hangman, and his men, and the cord fell out of the hand of the one who was going to tie the Jew fast. At the second scrape, all raised their legs, and the hangman let go his hold of the good servant and made himself ready to dance. At the third scrape, they all leaped up and began to dance, the judge and the Jew being the best at jumping. Soon all who had gathered in the marketplace out of curiosity were dancing with them, old and young, fat and lean one with another. The dogs likewise, which had run there, got up on their hind legs and capered about. And the longer he played, the higher sprang the dancers. so that they knocked against each other's heads and began to shriek terribly. At length, the judge cried, quite of breath, "I will give you your life if you will only stop fiddling." The good servant thereupon had compassion, took his fiddle, and hung it round his neck again, and stepped down the ladder. Then he went up to the Jew, who was lying upon the ground panting for breath, and said, "You rascal, now confess whence you got the money, or I will take my fiddle and begin to play again." I stole it, cried he, "but you have honestly earned it." So the judge had the Jew taken to the gallows and hanged as a thief. Lazy Harry. Harry was lazy, and although he had nothing else to do but drive his goat daily to pasture, he nevertheless groaned when he went home after his day's work was done. "It is indeed a heavy burden," said he, "and a wearisome employment to drive a goat into the field this way year after year till late into the autumn. If one could but lie down and sleep, but no one must have one's eyes open, lest it hurts the young trees or squeezes itself through the hedge into a garden or runs away altogether. How can one have any rest or peace of one's life?" He seated himself, collected his thoughts, and considered how he could set his shoulders free from this burden. For a long time, all thinking was to no purpose, but suddenly it was as if scales fell from his eyes. "I know what I will do," he cried. "I will marry fat Trina, who has also a goat and can take mine out with hers, and then I shall have no more need to trouble myself." So Harry got up, set his weary legs in motion, and went right across the street, for it was no farther, to where the parents of fat Trina lived, and asked for their industrious and virtuous daughter in marriage. The parents did not reflect long. Birds of a feather flocked together, they thought, and consented. So fat Trina became Harry's wife and led out both the goats. Harry had a good time of it, and had no work that he required to rest from but his own idleness. He only went out with her now and then and said, "I merely do it that I may afterwards enjoy rest more, otherwise one loses all feeling for it." But fat Trina was no less idle. "Dear Harry," said she one day, "why should we make our lives so toilsome when there is no need for it, and thus ruin the best days of our youth? Would it not be better for us to give the 2 goats which disturb us every morning in our sweetest sleep, with their bleating to our neighbor, and he will give us a beehive for them? We will put the beehive in a sunny place behind the house, and trouble ourselves no more about it. Bees do not require to be taken care of or driven into the field. They fly out and find the way home again for themselves, and collect honey without giving the very least trouble." "Thou hast spoken like a sensible woman," replied Harry. "We will carry out thy proposal without delay, and besides all that, honey tastes better and nourishes one better than goat's milk, and it can be kept longer too." The neighbor willingly gave a beehive for the 2 goats. The bees flew in and out from early morning till late evening, without ever tiring, and filled the hive with the most beautiful honey, so that in autumn Harry was able to take a whole pitcherful out of it. They placed the jug on a board, which was fixed to the wall of their bedroom, and as they were afraid that it might be stolen from them, or that the mice might find it, Trina brought in a stout hazel stick and put it beside her bed, so that without unnecessary getting up, she might reach it with her hand and drive away the uninvited guests. Lazy Harry did not like to leave his bed before noon. He who rises early, said, he wastes his substance. One morning, when he was still lying amongst the feathers in broad daylight resting after his long sleep, he said to his wife, "Women are fond of sweet things, and thou art always tasting the honey in private. It will be better for us to exchange it for a goose with a young gosling before thou eatest up the whole of it." "But," answered Trina, "not before we have a child to take care of them. Am I to worry myself with the little geese and spend all my strength on them to no purpose?" "Dost thou think," said Harry, "that the youngster will look after geese? Nowadays children no longer obey. They do according to their own fancy, because they consider themselves cleverer than their parents, just like that lad who was sent to seek the cow and chased 3 blackbirds." "Oh," replied Trina, "this one shall fare badly if he does not do what I say. I will take a stick and belabor his skin for him with more blows than I can count." "Look, Harry!" cried she in her zeal, and seized the stick which she had to drive the mice away with. "Look, this is the way I will fall on him." She reached her arm out to strike, but unhappily hit the honey pitcher above the bed. The pitcher struck against the wall and fell down in fragments, and the fine honey streamed down on the ground. "There lie the goose and the young gosling," said Harry, "and want no looking after. But it is lucky that the pitcher did not fall on my head. We have all reason to be satisfied with our lot." And then, as he saw that there was still some honey in one of the fragments, he stretched out his hand for it and said quite gaily, "The remains my wife. We will still eat with a relish, and we will rest a little after the fright we have had. What matters if we do get up a little later? The day is always long enough." "Yes," answered Trina, "we shall always get to the end of it at the proper time. Dost thou know that the snail was once asked to a wedding and set out to go, but arrived at the christening? In front of the house, it fell over the fence and said, 'Speed does no good.'" The poor man and the rich man. In olden times, when the Lord himself still used to walk about on this earth amongst men, it once happened that he was tired and overtaken by the darkness before he could reach an inn. Now there stood on the road before him 2 houses facing each other, the one large and beautiful, the other small and poor. The large one belonged to a rich man, and the small one to a poor man. Then the Lord thought, "I shall be no burden to the rich man. I will stay the night with him." When the rich man heard someone knocking at his door, he opened the window and asked the stranger what he wanted. The Lord answered, "I only ask for a night's lodging." Then the rich man looked at the traveler from head to foot, and as the Lord was wearing common clothes and did not look like one who had much money in his pocket, he shook his head and said, "No, I cannot take you, and my rooms are full of herbs and seeds, and if I were to lodge everyone who knocked at my door, I might very soon go begging myself. Go somewhere else for a lodging." And with this, he shut down the window and left the Lord standing there. So the Lord turned his back on the rich man and went across to the small house and knocked. He had hardly done so when the poor man opened the little door and bade the traveler come in. "Pass the night with me, it is already dark," said he. "You cannot go any further tonight." This pleased the Lord, and he went in. The poor man's wife shook hands with him and welcomed him, and said he was to make himself at home and put up with what they had got. They had not much to offer him, but what they had they would give him with all their hearts. Then she put the potatoes on the fire and while they were boiling, she milked the goat that they might have a little milk with them. When the cloth was laid, the Lord sat down with the man and his wife, and he enjoyed their coarse food, for there were happy faces at the table. When they had had supper, and it was bedtime, the woman called her husband apart, and said, "Hark you, dear husband, let us make up a bed of straw for ourselves tonight, and then the poor traveler can sleep in our bed and have a good rest, for he has been walking the whole day through, and that makes one weary." "With all my heart," he answered, "I will go and offer it to him." And he went to the stranger and invited him if he had no objection to sleep in their bed and rest his limbs properly. But the Lord was unwilling to take their bed from the two old folks. However, they would not be satisfied until at length he did it and lay down in their bed, while they themselves lay on some straw on the ground. Next morning, they got up before daybreak and made as good a breakfast as they could for the guest. When the sun shone in through the little window and the Lord had got up, he again ate with them, and then prepared to set out on his journey. But as he was standing at the door, he turned round and said, "As you are so kind and good, you may wish 3 things for yourselves, and I will grant them." Then the man said, "What else should I wish for but eternal happiness, and that we too, as long as we live, may be healthy and have every day our daily bread? For the 3rd wish, I do not know what to have." And the Lord said to him, "Will you wish for a new house instead of this old one?" "Oh yes," said the man, "if I can have that too, I should like it very much." And the Lord fulfilled his wish and changed their old house into a new one, again gave them his blessing, and went on. The sun was high when the rich man got up and leaned out of his window and saw on the opposite side of the way a new clean-looking house with red tiles and bright windows where the old hut used to be. He was very much astonished and called his wife and said to her, "Tell me what can have happened. Last night there was a miserable little hut standing there, and today there is a beautiful new house. Run over and see how that has come to pass." So his wife went and asked the poor man, and he said to her, "Yesterday evening a traveler came here and asked for a night's lodging, and this morning when he took leave of us, he granted us 3 wishes: eternal happiness, health during this life, and our daily bread as well, and besides this, a beautiful new house instead of our old hut." When the rich man's wife heard this, she ran back in haste and told her husband how it had happened. The man said, "I could tear myself to pieces if I had but known that traveler came to our house too, and wanted to sleep here, and I sent him away." "Quick," said his wife, "get on your horse. You can still catch the man up, and then you must ask to have 3 wishes granted to you." The rich man followed the good counsel and galloped away on his horse, and soon came up with the Lord. He spoke to him softly and pleasantly, and begged him not to take it amiss that he had not let him in directly. He was looking for the front door key, and in the meantime the stranger had gone away. If he returned the same way, he must come and stay with him. "Yes," said the Lord, "if I ever come back again, I will do so." Then the rich man asked if might not wish for 3 things too, as his neighbor had done. "Yes," said the Lord, he might, but it would not be to his advantage, and he had better not wish for anything. But the rich man thought that he could easily ask for something which would add to his happiness, if he only knew that it would be granted. So the Lord said to him, "Ride home then, and 3 wishes which you shall form shall be fulfilled." The rich man had now gained what he wanted, So he rode home and began to consider what he should wish for. As he was thus thinking, he let the bridle fall, and the horse began to caper about, so that he was continually disturbed in his meditations and could not collect his thoughts at all. He patted its neck and said, "Gently, Lisa," but the horse only began new tricks. Then at last he was angry and cried quite impatiently, "I wish your neck was broken." Directly he had said the words down, the horse fell on the ground, and there it lay dead and never moved again. And thus was his first wish fulfilled. As he was miserly by nature, he did not like to leave the harness lying there, so he cut it off and put it on his back, and now he had to go on foot. "I have still 2 wishes left," said he, and comforted himself with that thought. And now, as he was walking slowly through the sand, and the sun was burning hot at noonday, he grew quite hot-tempered and angry. The saddle hurt his back, and he had not yet any idea what to wish for. "If I were to wish for all the riches and treasures in the world," said he to himself, "I should still to think of all kinds of other things later on. I know that beforehand, but I will manage so that there is nothing at all left me to wish for afterwards." Then he sighed and said, "Ah, if I were but that Bavarian peasant who likewise had 3 wishes granted to him and knew quite well what to do, and in the first place wished for a great deal of beer, and in the second for as much beer as he was able to drink, and in the third for a barrel of beer into the bargain." Many a time he thought he had found it, but then it seemed to him to be after all too little. Then it came into his mind what an easy life his wife had, for she stayed at home in a cool room and enjoyed herself. This really did vex him, and before he was aware, he said, "I just wish she was sitting there on this saddle and could not get off it, instead of my having to drag it along on my back." And as the last word was spoken, the saddle disappeared from his back, and he saw that his second wish had been fulfilled. Then he really did feel warm. He began to run and wanted to be quite alone in his own room at home to think of something really large for his last wish. But when he arrived there and opened the parlor door, he saw his wife sitting in the middle of the room on the saddle, crying and complaining and quite unable to get off it. So he said, "Do bear it, and I will wish for all the riches on earth for thee, only stay where thou art." She, however, called him a fool and said, "What good will all the riches on earth do me if I am to sit on this saddle? Thou hast wished me on it, so thou must help me off." So whether he would or not, he was forced to let his third wish be that she should be quit of the saddle and able to get off it, and immediately the wish was fulfilled. So he got nothing by it but vexation, trouble, abuse, and the loss of his horse. But the poor people lived happily, quietly, and piously until their happy death. Trusty John. There was once on a time an old king who was ill and thought to himself, "I am lying on what must be my deathbed." Then said he, "Tell Faithful John to come to me." Faithful John was his favorite servant, and was so called because he had for his whole life long been so true to him. When therefore he came beside the bed, the king said to him, "Most faithful John, I feel my end approaching, and have no anxiety except about my son. He is still of tender age, and cannot always know how to guide himself. If thou dost not promise me to teach him everything that he ought to know, and to be his foster father, I cannot close my eyes in peace." Then answered Faithful John, "I will not forsake him, and will serve him with fidelity, even if it should cost me my life." On this the old king said, "Now I die in comfort and peace." Then he added, "After my death, thou shalt show him the whole castle, all the chambers, halls, and vaults, and all the treasures which lie therein. But the last chamber, in the long gallery, in which is the picture of the princess of the golden dwelling, shalt thou not show. If he sees that picture, he will fall violently in love with her, and will drop down in a swoon, and go through great danger for her sake. Therefore thou must preserve him from that." And when faithful John had once more given his promise to the old king about this, the king said no more, but laid his head on his pillow and died. When the old king had been carried to his grave, faithful John told the young king all that he had promised his father on his deathbed, and said, "This will I assuredly perform, and will be faithful to thee as I have been faithful to him, even if it should cost me my life." When the mourning was over, faithful John said to him, "It is now time that thou shouldst see thine inheritance. I will show thee thy father's palace." Then he took him about everywhere, up and down, and let him see all the riches and the magnificent apartments. Only there was one room which he did not open, that in which hung the dangerous picture. The picture was, however, so placed that when the door was opened, you looked straight on it, and it was so admirably painted that it seemed to breathe and live, and there was nothing more charming or more beautiful in the whole world. The young king, however, plainly remarked that faithful John always walked past this one door, and said, "Why dost thou never open this one for me?" "There is something within it," he replied, "which would terrify thee." But the king answered, "I have seen all the palace, and I will know what is in this room also." And he went and tried to break open the door by force. Then faithful John held him back and said, "I promised thy father before his death that thou shouldst not see that which is in this chamber. It might bring the greatest misfortune on thee and on me." "Ah, no," replied the young king. "If I do not go in, it will be my certain destruction. I should have no rest day or night until I had seen it with my own eyes. I shall not leave the place now until thou hast unlocked the door." Then faithful John saw that there was no help for it now, and with a heavy heart and many sighs, sought out the key from the great bunch. When he had opened the door, he went in first and thought, by standing before him, he could hide the portrait so that the king should not see it in front of him. But what availed that? The king stood on tiptoe and saw it over his shoulder. And when he saw the portrait of the maiden, which was so magnificent and shone with gold and precious stones, he fell fainting to the ground. Faithful John took him up, carried him to his bed, and sorrowfully thought, "The misfortune has befallen us, Lord God. What will be the end of it?" Then he strengthened him with wine until he came to himself again. The first words the king said were, "Ah, the beautiful portrait, whose is it? That is the princess of the golden dwelling," answered faithful John. Then the king continued, "My love for her is so great that if all the leaves on all the trees were tongues, they could not declare it. I will give my life to win her. Thou art my most faithful John, thou must help me." The faithful servant considered within himself for a long time how to set about the matter, for it was difficult even to obtain a sight of the king's daughter. At length he thought of a way and said to the king, "Everything which she has about her is of gold: tables, chairs, dishes, glasses, bowls, and household furniture. Among thy treasures, are 5 tons of gold. Let one of the goldsmiths of the kingdom work these up into all manner of vessels and utensils, into all kinds of birds, wild beasts, and strange animals, such as may please her, and we will go there with them and try our luck." The king ordered all the goldsmiths to be brought to him, and they had to work night and day until at last the most splendid things were prepared. When everything was stowed on board a ship, faithful John put on the dress of a merchant, and the king was forced to do the same in order to make himself quite unrecognizable. Then they sailed across the sea and sailed on until they came to the town wherein dwelt the princess of the golden dwelling. Faithful John bade the king stay behind on the ship and wait for him. "Perhaps I shall bring the princess with me," said he. "Therefore see that everything is in order. Have the golden vessel set out and the whole ship decorated." Then he gathered together in his apron all kinds of gold things, went on shore, and walked straight to the royal palace. When he entered the courtyard of the palace, a beautiful girl was standing there by the well with 2 golden buckets in her hand, drawing water with them. And when she was just turning round to carry away the sparkling water, she saw the stranger and asked who he was. So he answered, "I am a merchant," and opened his apron and let her look in. Then she cried, "Oh, what beautiful gold things!" and put her pails down and looked at the golden wares one after the other. Then said the girl, "The princess must see these. She has such great pleasure in golden things that she will buy all you have." She took him by the hand and led him upstairs, for she was the waiting maid. When the king's daughter saw the wares, she was quite delighted and said, "They are so beautifully worked that I will buy them all of thee." But faithful John said, "I am only the servant of a rich merchant. The things I have here are not to be compared with those my master has in his ship. They are the most beautiful and valuable things that have ever been made in gold." She wanted to have everything brought to her there, but he said, "There are so many of them that it would take a great many days to do that, and so many rooms would be required to exhibit them that your house is not big enough." Then her curiosity and longing were still more excited, until at last she said, "Conduct me to the ship. I will go there myself and behold the treasures of thine master." On this, faithful John was quite delighted and led her to the ship. And when the king saw her, he perceived that her beauty was even greater than the picture had represented it to be, and thought no other than that his heart would burst in twain. Then she got into the ship, and the king led her within. Faithful John, however, remained behind with the pilot and ordered the ship to be pushed off, saying, "Set all sail till it fly like a bird in air." Within, however, the king showed her the golden vessels, every one of them also the wild beasts and strange animals. Many hours went by while she was seeing everything, and in her delight she did not observe that the ship was sailing away. After she had looked at the last, she thanked the merchant and wanted to go home. But when she came to the side of the ship, she saw that it was on the deep sea far from land and hurrying onwards with all sail set. "Ah!" cried she in her alarm, "I am betrayed. I am carried away and have fallen into the power of a merchant. I would die rather." The king, however, seized her hand and said, "I am not a merchant. I am a king, and of no meaner origin than thou art. And if I have carried thee away with subtlety, that has come to pass because of my exceeding great love for thee. The first time that I looked on thy portrait, I fell fainting to the ground, when the princess of the golden dwelling heard that she was comforted, and her heart was inclined unto him, so that she willingly consented to be his wife. It so happened, however, while they were sailing onwards over the deep sea, that faithful John, who was sitting on the forepart of the vessel making music, saw 3 ravens in the air, which came flying towards them. On this he stopped playing and listened to what they were saying to each other, for that he well understood. One cried, "Oh, there he is carrying home the princess of the golden dwelling." "Yes," replied the second, "but he has not got her yet." Said the third, "But he has got her. She is sitting beside him in the ship." Then the first began again and cried, "What good will that do him? When they reach land, a chestnut horse will leap forward to meet him, and the prince will want to mount it. But if he does that, it will run away with him and rise up into the air with him, and he will never see his maiden more." Spake the second, "But is there no escape?" "Oh yes, if anyone else gets on it swiftly and takes out the pistol which must be in its holster and shoots the horse dead with it, the young king is saved. But who knows that? And whosoever does know it and tells it to him will be turned to stone from the toe to the knee." Then said the second, "I know more than that. Even if the horse be killed, the young king will still not keep his bride. When they go into the castle together, a wrought bridal garment will be lying there in a dish, and looking as if it were woven of gold and silver. It is, however, nothing but sulfur and pitch, and if he put it on, it will burn him to the very bone and marrow." Said the third, "Is there no escape at all?" "Oh yes," replied the second. "If anyone with gloves on seizes the garment and throws it into the fire and burns it, the young king will be saved. But what avails that whosoever knows it and tells it to him, half his body will become stone from the knee to the heart?" Then said the third, "I know still more. Even if the bridal garment be burnt, the young king will still not have his bride. After the wedding, when the dancing begins and the young queen is dancing, she will suddenly turn pale and fall down as if dead, and if someone does not lift her up and draw 3 drops of blood from her right breast and spit them out again, she will die. But if anyone who knows that were to declare it, he would become stone from the crown of his head to the sole of his foot." When the ravens had spoken of this together, they flew onwards, and faithful John had well understood everything. But from that time forth he became quiet and sad. For if he concealed what he had heard from his master, the latter would be unfortunate, and if he discovered it to him, he himself must sacrifice his life. At length, however, he said to himself, "I will save my master, even if it bring destruction on myself." When therefore they came to shore, all happened as had been foretold by the ravens, and a magnificent chestnut horse sprang forward. "Good," said the king, "he shall carry me to my palace," and was about to mount it, when faithful John got before him, jumped quickly on it, drew the pistol out of the holster, and shot the horse. Then the other attendants of the king, who after all were not very fond of faithful John, cried, "How shameful to kill the beautiful animal that was to have carried the king to his palace." But the king said, "Hold your peace and leave him alone. He is my most faithful John, who knows what may be the good of that." They went into the palace, and in the hall there stood a dish, and therein lay the bridal garment, looking no otherwise than as if it were made of gold and silver. The young king went towards it, and was about to take hold of it, but faithful John pushed him away, seized it with gloves on, carried it quickly to the fire, and burnt it. The other attendants again began to murmur, and said, Behold, now he is even burning the king's bridal garment. But the young king said, Who knows what good he may have done? Leave him alone. He is my most faithful John. And now the wedding was solemnized, the dance began, and the bride also took part in it. Then faithful John was watchful and looked into her face, and suddenly she turned pale and fell to the ground as if she were dead. On this he ran hastily to her, lifted her up, and bore her into a chamber. Then he laid her down and knelt, and sucked the 3 drops of blood from her right breast, and spat them out. Immediately she breathed again, and recovered herself. But the young king had seen this, and being ignorant why faithful John had done it, was angry and cried, Throw him into a dungeon. Next morning, faithful John was condemned and led to the gallows. And when he stood on high and was about to be executed, he said, Everyone who has to die is permitted before his end to make one last speech. May I too claim the right? Yes, answered the king, it shall be granted unto thee. Then said faithful John, I am unjustly condemned, and have always been true to thee. And he related how he had hearkened to the conversation of the ravens when on the sea, and how he had been obliged to do all these things in order to save his master. Then cried the king, O my most faithful John, pardon, pardon, bring him down. But as faithful John spoke the last word, he had fallen down lifeless and become a stone. Thereupon the king and the queen suffered great anguish, and the king said, Ah, how ill I have requited great fidelity, and ordered the stone figure to be taken up and placed in his bedroom beside his bed. And as often as he looked on it, he wept and said, Ah, if I could bring thee to life again, my most faithful John. Some time passed, and the queen bore twins 2 sons who grew fast and were her delight. Once, when the queen was at church and the 2 children were sitting playing beside their father, the latter, full of grief, again looked at the stone figure, sighed, and said, Ah, if I could but bring thee to life again, my most faithful John. Then the stone began to speak, and said, Thou canst bring me to life again, if thou wilt use for that purpose what is dearest to thee. Then cried the king, I will give everything I have in the world for thee. The stone continued, If thou wilt, will cut off the heads of thy 2 children with thine own hand, and sprinkle me with their blood, I shall be restored to life. The king was terrified when he heard that he himself must kill his dearest children, but he thought of faithful John's great fidelity, and how he had died for him, drew his sword, and with his own hand cut off the children's heads. And when he had smeared the stone with their blood, life returned to it, and faithful John stood once more safe and healthy before him. He said to the king, Thy truth shall not go unrewarded, and took the heads of the children, put them on again, and rubbed the wounds with their blood, on which they became whole again immediately, and jumped about and went on playing as if nothing had happened. Then the king was full of joy, and when he saw the queen coming, he hid faithful John and the 2 children in a great cupboard. When she entered, he said to her, Hast thou been praying in the church? Yes, answered she, but I have constantly been thinking of faithful John, and what misfortune has befallen him through us. Then said he, Dear wife, we can give him his life again, but it will cost us our 2 little sons, whom we must sacrifice. The queen turned pale, and her heart was full of terror, but she said, We owe it to him for his great fidelity. Then the king was rejoiced that she thought as he had thought, and went and opened the cupboard, and brought forth faithful John and the children, and said, God be praised, he is delivered, and we have our little sons again also, and told her how everything had occurred. Then they dwelt together in much happiness until their death. The Three Black Princesses. East India was besieged by an enemy who would not retire until he had received $600. Then the townsfolk caused it to be proclaimed by beat of drum that whosoever was able to procure the money should be burgomaster. Now there was a poor fisherman who fished on the lake with his son, and the enemy came and took the son prisoner and gave the father $600 for him. So the father went and gave them to the great men of the town, and the enemy departed, and the fisherman became burgomaster. Then it was proclaimed that whosoever did not say, Mr. Burgomaster, should be put to death on the gallows. The son got away again from the enemy and came to a great forest on a high mountain. The mountain opened, and he went into a great enchanted castle, wherein chairs, tables, and benches were all hung with black. Then came 3 young princesses who were entirely dressed in black, but had a little white on their faces. They told him he was not to be afraid, they would not hurt him, and that he could deliver them. He said he would gladly do that if he did, but no how. At this, they told him he must for a whole year not speak to them, and also not look at them, and what he wanted to have he was just to ask for, and if they dared give him an answer, they would do so. When he had been there for a long while, he said he should like to go to his father, and they told him he might go. He was to take with him this purse with money put on this coat, and in a week he must be back there again. Then he was caught up and was instantly in East India. He could no longer find his father in the fisherman's hut, and asked the people where the poor fisherman could be. And they told him he must not say that, or he would come to the gallows. Then he went to his father and said, Fisherman, how hast thou got here? Then the father said, Thou must not say that if the great men of the town knew of that thou wouldst come to the gallows. He, however, would not stop, and was brought to the gallows. When he was there, he said, O my masters, just give me leave to go to the old fisherman's hut. Then he put on his old smock frock, and came back to the great men, and said, Do ye not now see, am I not the son of the poor fisherman? Did I not earn bread for my father and mother in this dress? Hereupon his father knew him again, and begged his pardon, and took him home with him. And then he related all that had happened to him, and how he had got into a forest on a high mountain, and the mountain had opened, and he had gone into an enchanted castle where all was black, and 3 young princesses had come to him who were black except a little white on their faces. And they had told him not to fear, and that he could deliver them. Then his mother said that might very likely not be a good thing to do, and that he ought to take a holy water vessel with him and drop some boiling water on their faces. He went back again, and he was in great fear, and he dropped the water on their faces as they were sleeping, and they all turned half white. Then all the 3 princesses sprang up and said, Thou accursed dog, our blood shall cry for vengeance on thee. Now there is no man born in the world, nor will any ever be born who can set us free. We have still 3 brothers who are bound by 7 chains. They shall tear thee to pieces. Then there was a loud shrieking all over the castle, and he sprang out of the window and broke his leg, and the castle sank into the earth again. The mountain shut to again, and no one knew where the castle had stood. The 3 snake leaves. There was once on a time a poor man who could no longer support his only son. Then said the son, "Dear father, things go so badly with us that I am a burden to you. I would rather go away and see how I can earn my bread." So the father gave him his blessing and with great sorrow took leave of him. At this time, the king of a mighty empire was at war, and the youth took service with him, and with him went out to fight. And when he came before the enemy, there was a battle and great danger, and it rained shot until his comrades fell on all sides. And when the leader also was killed, those left were about to take flight. But the youth stepped forth, spoke boldly to them, and cried, "We will not let our fatherland be ruined." Then the others followed him, and he pressed on and conquered the enemy. When the king heard that he owed the victory to him alone, he raised him above all the others, gave him great treasures, and made him the first in the kingdom. The king had a daughter who was very beautiful, but she was also very strange. She had made a vow to take no one as her lord and husband who did not promise to let himself be buried alive with her if she died first. "If he loves me with all his heart," said she, "of what use will life be to him afterwards?" On her side she would do the same, and if he died first, would go down to the grave with him. This strange oath had up to this time frightened away all wooers, but the youth became so charmed with her beauty that he cared for nothing but asked her father for her. "But dost thou know what thou must promise?" said the king. "I must be buried with her." He replied, "If I outlive her, but my love is so great that I do not mind the danger." Then the king consented, and the wedding was solemnized with great splendor. They lived now for a while happy and contented with each other, and then it befell that the young queen was attacked by a severe illness, and no physician could save her. And as she lay there dead, the young king remembered what he had been obliged to promise, and was horrified at having to lie down alive in the grave, but there was no escape. The king had placed sentries at all the gates, and it was not possible to avoid his fate. When the day came when the corpse was to be buried, he was taken down into the royal vault with it, and then the door was shut and bolted. Near the coffin stood a table on which were 4 candles, 4 loaves of bread, and 4 bottles of wine, and when this provision came to an end, he would have to die of hunger. And now he sat there full of pain and grief, ate every day only a little piece of bread, drank only a mouthful of wine, and nevertheless saw death daily drawing nearer. Whilst he thus gazed before him, he saw a snake creep out of a corner of the vault and approach the dead body. And as he thought it came to gnaw at it, he drew his sword and said, "As long as I live, thou shalt not touch her," and hewed the snake in 3 pieces. After a time, a second snake crept out of the hole, and when it saw the other lying dead and cut in pieces, it went back, but soon came again with 3 green leaves in its mouth. Then it took the 3 pieces of the snake, laid them together as they ought to go, and placed one of the leaves on each wound. Immediately the severed parts joined themselves together. The snake moved and became alive again, and both of them hastened away together. The leaves were left lying on the ground, and a desire came into the mind of the unhappy man who had been watching all this to know if the wondrous power of the leaves, which had brought the snake to life again, could not likewise be of service to a human being. So he picked up the leaves and laid one of them on the mouth of his dead wife, and the 2 others on her eyes. And hardly had he done this, then the blood stirred in her veins, rose into her pale face, and colored it again. Then she drew breath, opened her eyes, and said, "Ah, God, where am I? Thou art with me, dear wife." He answered and told her how everything had happened and how he had brought her back again to life. Then he gave her some wine and bread, and when she had regained her strength, he raised her up, and they went to the door and knocked and called so loudly that the sentries heard it and told the king. The king came down himself and opened the door, and there he found both strong and well, and rejoiced with them that now all sorrow was over. The young king, however, took the 3 snake leaves with him, gave them to a servant, and said, "Keep them for me carefully, and carry them constantly about thee. Who knows in what trouble they may yet be of service to us?" A change had, however, taken place in his wife. After she had been restored to life, it seemed as if all love for her husband had gone out of her heart. After some time, when he wanted to make a voyage over the sea to visit his old father, and they had gone on board a ship, she forgot the great love and fidelity which he had shown her, and which had been the means of rescuing her from death, and conceived a wicked inclination for the skipper. And once, when the young king lay there asleep, she called in the skipper, and seized the sleeper by the head, and the skipper took him by the feet, and thus they threw him down into the sea. When the shameful deed was done, she said, "Now let us return home, and say that he died on the way. I will extol and praise thee so to my father, that he will marry me to thee, and make thee the heir to his crown." But the faithful servant, who had seen all that they did unseen by them, unfastened a little boat from the ship, got into it, sailed after his master, and let the traders go on their way. He fished up the dead body, and by the help of the 3 snake leaves which he carried about with him, and laid on the eyes and mouth, he fortunately brought the young king back to life. They both rowed with all their strength day and night, and their little boat flew so swiftly that they reached the old king before the others did. He was astonished when he saw them come alone, and asked what had happened to them. When he learnt the wickedness of his daughter, he said, "I cannot believe that she has behaved so ill, but the truth will soon come to light," and bade both go into a secret chamber and keep themselves hidden from everyone. Soon afterwards, the great ship came sailing in, and the godless woman appeared before her father with a troubled countenance. He said, "Why dost thou come back alone? Where is thy husband?" "Ah, dear father," she replied, "I come home again in great grief. During the voyage my husband became suddenly ill and died, and if the good skipper had not given me his help, it would have gone ill with me. He was present at his death and can tell you all." The king said, "I will make the dead alive again," and opened the chamber and bade the 2 come out. When the woman saw her husband, she was thunderstruck and fell on her knees and begged for mercy. The king said, "There is no mercy. He was ready to die with thee, and restored thee to life again, but thou hast murdered him in his sleep, and shalt receive the reward that thou deservest." Then she was placed with her accomplice in a ship which had been pierced with holes, and sent out to sea, where they soon sank amid the waves. The Valiant Little Tailor. One summer morning, a little tailor was sitting on his board near the window and working cheerfully with all his might, when an old woman came down the street crying, "Good jelly to sell, good jelly to sell." The cry sounded pleasant in the little tailor's ears, so he put his head out of the window and called out, "Here, my good woman, come here if you want a customer." So the poor woman climbed the steps with her heavy basket and was obliged to unpack and display all her pots to the tailor. He looked at every one of them, and lifting all the lids, applied his nose to each, and said at last, "The jelly seems pretty good. You may weigh me out 4½ ounces, or I don't mind having 1/4 pound." The woman, who had expected to find a good customer, gave him what he asked for, but went off angry and grumbling. "This jelly is the very thing for me," cried the little tailor. "It will give me strength and cunning." And he took down the bread from the cupboard, cut a hole round of the loaf, and spread the jelly on it, laid it near him, and went on stitching more gallantly than ever. All the while the scent of the sweet jelly was spreading throughout the room, where there were quantities of flies who were attracted by it and flew to partake. "Now then, who asked you to come?" said the tailor, and drove the unbidden guests away. But the flies, not understanding his language, were not to be got rid of like that, and returned in larger numbers than before. Then the tailor, not being able to stand it any longer, took from his chimney corner a ragged cloth, and saying, "Now I'll let you have it. Beat it among them unmercifully." When he ceased and counted the slain, he found 7 lying dead before him. "This is indeed somewhat," he said, wondering at his own gallantry. "The whole town shall know this." So he hastened to cut out a belt, and he stitched it and put on it in large capitals, 7 at one blow. "The town, did I say," said the little tailor. "The whole world shall know it." And his heart quivered with joy like a lamb's tail. The tailor fastened the belt round him and began to think of going out into the world, for his workshop seemed too small for his worship. So he looked about in all the house for something that it would be useful to take with him. But he found nothing but an old cheese, which he put in his pocket. Outside the door, he noticed that a bird had got caught in the bushes, so he took that and put it in his pocket with the cheese. Then he set out gallantly on his way, and as he was light and active, he felt no fatigue. The way led over a mountain, and when he reached the topmost peak, he saw a terrible giant sitting there and looking about him at his ease. The tailor went bravely up to him, called out to him and said, "Comrade, good day. There you sit looking over the wide world. I am on the way thither to seek my fortune. Have you a fancy to go with me?" The giant looked at the tailor contemptuously and said, "You little rascal, you miserable fellow." "That may be," answered the little tailor, and undoing his coat, he showed the giant his belt. "You can read there whether I am a man or not." The giant read 7 at one blow, and thinking it meant men that the tailor had killed, felt at once more respect for the little fellow. But as he wanted to prove him, he took up a stone and squeezed it so hard that water came out of it. "Now you can do that," said the giant. "That is, if you have the strength for it." "That's not much," said the little tailor. "I call that play." And he put his hand in his pocket and took out the cheese and squeezed it so that the whey ran out of it. "Well," said he, "what do you think of that?" The giant did not know what to say to it, for he could not have believed it of the little man. Then the giant took up a stone and threw it so high that it was nearly out of sight. "Now, little fellow, suppose you do that." "Well thrown," said the tailor, "but the stone fell back to earth again. I will throw you one that will never come back." So he felt in his pocket, took out the bird, and threw it into the air. And the bird, when it found itself at liberty, took wing, flew off, and returned no more. "What do you think of that, comrade?" asked the tailor. "There is no doubt that you can throw," said the giant, "but we will see if you can carry." he led the little tailor to a mighty oak tree which had been felled and was lying on the ground, and said, "Now, if you are strong enough, help me to carry this tree out of the wood." "Willingly," answered the little man. "You take the trunk on your shoulders, I will take the branches with all their foliage. That is much the most difficult." So the giant took the trunk on his shoulders, and the tailor seated himself on a branch. And the giant, who could not see what he was doing, had the whole tree to carry, and the little man on it as well. And the little man was very cheerful and merry, and whistled the tune, "There were 3 tailors riding by," as if carrying the tree was mere child's play. The giant, when he had struggled on under his heavy load, a part of the way was tired out, and cried, "Look here, I must let go the tree." The tailor jumped off quickly, and taking hold of the tree with both arms, as if he were carrying it, said to the giant, "You see, you can't carry the tree, though you are such a big fellow." They went on together a little farther, and presently they came to a cherry tree, and the giant took hold of the topmost branches where the ripest fruit hung, and pulling them downwards, gave them to the tailor to hold, bidding him eat. But the little tailor was much too weak to hold the tree, and as the giant let go, the tree sprang back, and the tailor was caught up into the air. And when he dropped down again without any damage, the giant said to him, "How is this? Haven't you strength enough to hold such a weak sprig as that?" "It is not strength that is lacking," answered the little tailor. "How should it to one who has slain 7 at one blow? I just jumped over the tree because the hunters are shooting down there in the bushes. You jump it too if you can." The giant made the attempt, and not being able to vault the tree, he remained hanging in the branches, so that once more the little tailor got the better of him. Then said the giant, "As you are such a gallant fellow, suppose you come with me to our den and stay the night." The tailor was quite willing, and he followed him. When they reached the den, there sat some other giants by the fire, and each had a roasted sheep in his hand, and was eating it. The little tailor looked round and thought, "There is more elbow room here than in my workshop." And the giant showed him a bed, and told him he had better lie down upon it and go to sleep. The bed was, however, too big for the tailor, so he did not stay in it, but crept into a corner to sleep. As soon as it was midnight, the giant got up, took a great staff of iron, and beat the bed through with one stroke, and supposed he had made an end of that grasshopper of a tailor. Very early in the morning, the giants went into the wood, and forgot all about the little tailor. And when they saw him coming after them alive and merry, they were terribly frightened, and thinking he was going to kill them, they ran away in all haste. So the little tailor marched on, always following his nose. And after he had gone a great way, he entered the courtyard belonging to a king's palace. And there he felt so overpowered with fatigue that he lay down and fell asleep. In the meanwhile came various people who looked at him very curiously, and read on his belt, 7 at one blow. "Oh," said they, "why should this great lord come here in time of peace? What a mighty champion he must be." Then they went and told the king about him, and they thought that if war should break out, what a worthy and useful man he would be, and that he ought not to be allowed to depart at any price. The king then summoned his council, and sent one of his courtiers to the little tailor to beg him, so soon as he should wake up, to consent to serve in the king's army. So the messenger stood and waited at the sleeper's side until his limbs began to stretch and his eyes to open, and then he carried his answer back. And the answer was, "That was the reason for which I came. said the little tailor, "I am ready to enter the king's service." So he was received into it very honorably, and a separate dwelling set apart for him. But the rest of the soldiers were very much set against the little tailor, and they wished him 1,000 miles away. "What shall be done about it?" they said among themselves. "If we pick a quarrel and fight with him, then 7 of us will fall at each blow. That will be of no good to us." So they came to a resolution and went all together to the king to ask for their discharge. "We never intended," said they, "to serve with a man who kills 7 at a blow." The king felt sorry to lose all his faithful servants because of one man, and he wished that he had never seen him and would willingly get rid of him if he might. But he did not dare to dismiss the little tailor for fear he should kill all the king's people and place himself upon the throne. He thought a long while about it and at last made up his mind what to do. He sent for the little tailor and told him that as he was so great a warrior, he had a proposal to make to him. He told him that in a wood in his dominions dwelt 2 giants, who did great damage by robbery, murder, and fire, and that no man durst go near them for fear of his life, but that if the tailor should overcome and slay both these giants, the king would give him his only daughter in marriage and half his kingdom as dowry, and that 100 horsemen should go with him to give him assistance. That would be something for a man like me. One, thought the little tailor, a beautiful princess and half a kingdom are not to be had every day. And he said to the king, "Oh yes, I can soon overcome the giants and yet have no need of the 100 horsemen. He who can kill 7 at one blow has no need to be afraid of 2. So the little tailor set out, and the 100 horsemen followed him. When he came to the border of the wood, he said to his escort, "Stay here while I go to attack the giants." Then he sprang into the wood and looked about him right and left. After a while, he caught sight of the 2 giants. They were lying down under a tree, asleep and snoring, so that all the branches shook. The little tailor, all alive, filled both his pockets with stones and climbed up into the tree and made his way to an overhanging bough, so that he could seat himself just above the sleepers. And from there he let one stone after another fall on the chest of one of the giants. For a long time the giant was quite unaware of this, but at last he waked up and pushed his comrade and said, "What are you hitting me for?" "You are dreaming," said the other. "I am not touching you." And they composed themselves again to sleep, and the tailor let fall a stone on the other giant. "What can that be?" cried he. "What are you casting at me?" "I am casting nothing at you," answered the first, grumbling. They disputed about it for a while, but as they were tired they gave it up at last, and their eyes closed once more. Then the little tailor began his game, anew picked out a heavier stone and threw it down with force upon the first giant's chest. "This is too much," cried he, and sprang up like a madman and struck his companion such a blow that the tree shook above them. The other paid him back with ready coin, and they fought with such fury that they tore up trees by their roots to use for weapons against each other, so that at last they both of them lay dead upon the ground. And now the little tailor got down. "Another piece of luck," said he, "that the tree I was sitting in did not get torn up too, or else I should have had to jump like a squirrel from one tree to another." Then he drew his sword and gave each of the giants a few hacks in the breast, and went back to the horsemen and said, "The deed is done. I have made an end of both of them, but it went hard with me. In the struggle they rooted up trees to defend themselves, but it was of no use. They had to do with a man who can kill 7 at one blow. "Then are you not wounded?" asked the horseman. "Nothing of the sort," answered the tailor. "I have not turned a hair." The horseman still would not believe it, and rode into the wood to see, and there they found the giants wallowing in their blood, and all about them lying the uprooted trees. The little tailor then claimed the promised boon, but the king repented him of his offer, and he sought again how to rid himself of the hero. "Before you can possess my daughter and the half of my kingdom," said he to the tailor, "you must perform another heroic act. In the wood lives a unicorn who does great damage. You must secure him. A unicorn does not strike more terror into me than 2 giants. 7 at one blow, that is my way," was the tailor's answer. So, taking a rope and an axe with him, he went out into the wood and told those who were ordered to attend him to wait outside. He had not far to seek. The unicorn soon came out and sprang at him as if he would make an end of him without delay. "Softly, softly," said he, "most haste, worse speed," and remained standing until the animal came quite near. Then he slipped quietly behind a tree. The unicorn ran with all his might against the tree and stuck his horn so deep into the trunk that he could not get it out again, and so was taken. "Now I have you," said the tailor, coming out from behind the tree and putting the rope round the unicorn's neck. He took the axe, set free the horn, and when all his party were assembled, he led forth the animal and brought it to the king. The king did not yet wish to give him the promised reward, and set him a 3rd task to do. Before the wedding could take place, the tailor was to secure a wild boar, which had done a great deal of damage in the wood. The huntsmen were to accompany him. "All right," said the tailor, "this is child's play." But he did not take the huntsmen into the wood, and they were all the better pleased, for the wild boar had many a time before received them in such a way that they had no fancy to disturb him. When the boar caught sight of the tailor, he ran at him with foaming mouth and gleaming tusks to bear him to the ground, but the nimble hero rushed into a chapel which chanced to be near, and jumped quickly out of a window on the other side. The boar ran after him, and when he got inside, the door shut after him, and there he was imprisoned, for the creature was too big and unwieldy to jump out of the window too. Then the little tailor called the huntsmen that they might see the prisoner with their own eyes. And then he betook himself to the king, who now, whether he liked it or not, was obliged to fulfill his promise and give him his daughter and the half of his kingdom. But if he had known that the great warrior was only a little tailor, he would have taken it still more to heart. So the wedding was celebrated with great splendor and little joy, and the tailor was made into a king. One night the young queen heard her husband talking in his sleep and saying, "Now, boy, make me that waistcoat and patch me those breeches, or I will lay my yard measure about your shoulders." And so, as she perceived of what low birth her husband was, she went to her father the next morning and told him all, and begged him to set her free from a man who was nothing better than a tailor. The king bade her be comforted, saying, "Tonight, leave your bedroom door open. My guards shall stand outside, and when he is asleep, they shall come in and bind him and carry him off to a ship, and he shall be sent to the other side of the world." So the wife felt consoled, but the king's water-bearer, who had been listening all the while, went to the little tailor and disclosed to him the whole plan. "I shall put a stop to all this," said he. At night he lay down as usual in bed, And when his wife thought that he was asleep, she got up, opened the door, and lay down again. The little tailor, who only made believe to be asleep, began to murmur plainly, "Now, boy, make me that waistcoat and patch me those breeches, or I will lay my yard measure about your shoulders. I have slain 7 at one blow, killed 2 giants, caught a unicorn, and taken a wild boar. And shall I be afraid of those who are standing outside my room door?" And when they heard the tailor say this, a great fear seized them. They fled away as if they had been wild hares, and none of them would venture to attack him. And so the little tailor, all his lifetime, remained a king. Ferdinand the Faithful. Once on a time lived a man and a woman who, so long as they were rich, had no children, but when they were poor, they had a little boy. They could, however, find no godfather for him, so the man said he would just go to another place to see if he could get one there. As he went, a poor man met him, who asked him where he was going. He said he was going to see if he could get a godfather, that he was poor, so no one would stand as godfather for him. "Oh," said the poor man, "you are poor, and I am poor. I will be godfather for you, but I am so ill off I can give the child nothing. Go home and tell the nurse that she is to come to the church with the child." When they all got to the church together, the beggar was already there, and he gave the child the name of Ferdinand the Faithful. When he was going out of the church, the beggar said, "Now go home. I can give you nothing, and you likewise ought to give me nothing." But he gave a key to the nurse and told her when she got home she was to give it to the father, who was to take care of it until the child was 14 years old, and then he was to go on the heath where there was a castle which the key would fit, and that all which was therein should belong to him. Now, when the child was 7 years old and had grown very big, he once went to play with some other boys, and each of them boasted that he had got more from his godfather than the other. But the child could say nothing, and was vexed, and went home, and said to his father, "Did I get nothing at all then from my godfather?" "Oh, yes," said the father, "thou hadst a key. If there is a castle standing on the heath, just go to it and open it." Then the boy went thither, but no castle was to be seen or heard of. After 7 years more, when he was 14 years old, he again went thither, and there stood the castle. When he had opened it, there was nothing within but a horse, a white one. Then the boy was so full of joy because he had a horse that he mounted on it and galloped back to his father. "Now I have a white horse, and I will travel," said he. So he set out, and as he was on his way, a pen was lying on the road. At first he thought he would pick it up, but then again he thought to himself, "Thou shouldst leave it lying there. Thou wilt easily find a pen where thou art going, if thou hast need of one." As he was thus riding away, a voice called after him, "Ferdinand the Faithful, take it with thee." He looked around, but saw no one. Then he went back again and picked it up. When he had ridden a little way farther, he passed by a lake, and a fish was lying on the bank, gasping and panting for breath. So he said, "Wait, my dear fish, I will help thee get into the water." And he took hold of it by the tail and threw it into the lake. Then the fish put its head out of the water and said, "As thou hast helped me out of the mud, I will give thee a flute. When thou art in any need, play on it, and then I will help thee. And if ever thou lettest anything fall in the water, just play, and I will reach it out to thee." Then he rode away, and there came to him a man who asked him where he was going. Oh, to the next place. Then what his name was Ferdinand the Faithful. So then we have got almost the same name. I am called Ferdinand the Unfaithful. And they both set out to the inn in the nearest place. Now, it was unfortunate that Ferdinand the Unfaithful knew everything that the other had ever thought and everything he was about to do. He knew it by means of all kinds of wicked arts. There was, however, in the inn an honest girl who had a bright face and behaved very prettily. She fell in love with Ferdinand the Faithful because he was a handsome man, and she asked him whither he was going. "Oh, I am just traveling round about," said he. Then she said he ought to stay there, for the king of that country wanted an attendant or an outrider, and he ought to enter his service. He answered he could not very well go to anyone like that and offer himself. Then said the maiden, "Oh, but I will soon do that for you." And so she went straight to the king and told him that she knew of an excellent servant for him. He was well pleased with that, and had Ferdinand the Faithful brought to him and wanted to make him his servant. He, however, liked better to be an outrider, for where his horse was there, he also wanted to be. So the king made him an outrider. When Ferdinand the Unfaithful learnt that, he said to the girl, "What dost thou help him and not me?" "Oh," said the girl, "I will help thee too." She thought, "I must keep friends with that man, for he is not to be trusted." She went to the king and offered him as a servant, and the king was willing. Now when the king met his lords in the morning, he always lamented and said, "Oh, if I had but my love with me." Ferdinand the Unfaithful was, however, always hostile to Ferdinand the Faithful. So once, when the king was complaining thus, he said, "You have the outrider send him away to get her, and if he does not do it, his head must be struck off." Then the king sent for Ferdinand the Faithful and told him that there was in this place or in that place a girl he loved, and that he was to bring her to him, and if he did not do it, he should die. Ferdinand the Faithful went into the stable to his white horse and complained and lamented, "Oh, what an unhappy man I am!" Then someone behind him cried, "Ferdinand the Faithful, why weepest thou?" He looked round, but saw no one, and went on lamenting, "Oh, my dear little white horse, now must I leave thee, now must I die." Then someone cried once more, "Ferdinand the Faithful, why weepest thou?" Then for the first time he was aware that it was his little white horse who was putting that question. "Dost thou speak, my little white horse? Canst thou do that?" And again he said, "I am to go to this place and to that, and am to bring the bride. Canst thou tell me how I am to set about it?" Then answered the little white horse, "Go thou to the king, and say, if he will give thou what thou must have, thou wilt get her for him. If he will give thee a ship full of meat and a ship full of bread, it will succeed. Great giants dwell on the lake, and if thou takest no meat with thee for them, they will tear thee to pieces. And there are the large birds which would pick the eyes out of thy head, if thou hadst no bread for them." Then the king made all the butchers in the land kill, and all the bakers bake, that the ships might be filled. When they were full, the little white horse said to Ferdinand the Faithful, "Now mount me, and go with me into the ship, and then when the giants come, say, Peace, peace, my dear little giants, I have had thought of ye, something I have brought for ye. And when the birds come, thou shalt again say, Peace, peace, my dear little birds, I have had thought of ye, something I have brought for ye. Then they will do nothing to thee, and when thou comest to the castle, the giants will help thee." Then go up to the castle and take a couple of giants with thee. There the princess lies sleeping. Thou must, however, not awaken her, but the giants must lift her up and carry her in her bed to the ship." And now everything took place as the little white horse had said, and Ferdinand the Faithful gave the giants and the birds what he had brought with him for them, and that made the giants willing. And they carried the princess in her bed to the king. And when she came to the king, she said she could not live. She must have her writings. They had been left in her castle. Then by the instigation of Ferdinand the Unfaithful, Ferdinand the Faithful was called, and the king told him he must fetch the writings from the castle, or he should die. Then he went once more into the stable and bemoaned himself and said, "Oh, my dear little white horse, now I am to go away again. How am I to do it?" Then the little white horse said he was just to load the ships full again. So it happened again as it had happened before, and the giants and the birds were satisfied and made gentle by the meat. When they came to the castle, the white horse told Ferdinand the Faithful that he must go in, and that on the table in the princess's bedroom lay the writings. And Ferdinand the Faithful went in and fetched them. When they were on the lake, he let his pen fall into the water. Then said the white horse, "Now I cannot help thee at all." But he remembered his flute and began to play on it, and the fish came with the pen in its mouth and gave it to him. So he took the writings to the castle where the wedding was celebrated. The queen, however, did not love the king because he had no nose, but she would have much liked to love Ferdinand the Faithful. Once, therefore, when all the lords of the court were together, the queen said she could do feats of magic, that she could cut off anyone's head and put it on again, and that one of them ought just to try it. But none of them would be the first, so Ferdinand the Faithful again, at the instigation of Ferdinand the Unfaithful, undertook it, and she hewed off his head and put it on again for him, and it healed together directly, so that it looked as if he had a red thread round his throat. Then the king said to her, "My child, and where hast thou learnt that?" "Yes," she said, "I understand the art. Shall I just try it on thee also?" "Oh, yes," said he. But she cut off his head and did not put it on again, but pretended that she could not get it on, and that it would not keep fixed. Then the king was buried, but she married Ferdinand the Faithful. He, however, always rode on his white horse, and once when he was seated on it, it told him that he was to go on to the heath which he knew and gallop 3 times round it. And when he had done that, the white horse stood up on its hind legs and was changed into a king's son. The wishing table, the gold ass, and the cudgel in the sack. There was once upon a time a tailor who had 3 sons and only 1 goat. But as the goat supported the whole of them with her milk, she was obliged to have good food and to be taken every day to pasture. The sons therefore did this in turn. Once the eldest took her to the churchyard, where the finest herbs were to be found, and let her eat and run about there. At night, when it was time to go home, he asked, "Goat, hast thou had enough?" The goat answered, "I have eaten so much, not a leaf more I'll touch, meh, meh." "Come home then," said the youth, and took hold of the cord round her neck, led her into the stable, and tied her up securely. "Well," said the old tailor, "has the goat had as much food as she ought?" "Oh," answered the son, "she has eaten so much, not a leaf more she'll touch." But the father wished to satisfy himself, and went down to the stable, stroked the dear animal, and asked, "Goat, art thou satisfied?" The goat answered, "Wherewithal should I be satisfied? Among the graves I leapt about and found no food, so went without. Meh, meh." "What do I hear?" cried the tailor, and ran upstairs and said to the youth, "Hollo, thou liar, thou saidst the goat had had enough, and hast let her hunger." And in his anger he took the yard measure from the wall and drove him out with blows. Next day it was the turn of the second son, who looked out for a place in the fence of the garden where nothing but good herbs grew, and the goat cleared them all off. At night, when he wanted to go home, he asked, "Goat, art thou satisfied?" The goat answered, "I have eaten so much, not a leaf more I'll touch me." "Come home then," said the youth, and led her home and tied her up in the stable. "Well," said the old tailor, "has the goat had as much food as she ought?" "Oh," answered the son, "she has eaten so much not a leaf more she'll touch." The tailor would not rely on this, but went down to the stable and said, "Goat, hast thou had enough?" The goat answered, "Wherewithal should I be satisfied? Among the graves I leapt about and found no food, so went without. Meh, meh." "The godless wretch," cried the tailor, "to let such a good animal hunger." And he ran up and drove the youth out of doors with the yard measure. Now came the turn of the third son, who wanted to do the thing well, and sought out some bushes with the finest leaves, and let the goat devour them. In the evening, when he wanted to go home, he asked, "Goat, hast thou had enough?" The goat answered, "I have eaten so much not a leaf more I'll touch me. "Come home then," said the youth, and led her into the stable and tied her up. "Well," said the old tailor, "has the goat had a proper amount of food?" "She has eaten so much not a leaf more she'll touch." The tailor did not trust to that, but went down and asked, "Goat, hast thou had enough?" The wicked beast answered, "Wherewithal should I be satisfied? Among the graves I leapt about and found no leaves, so went without. Meh, meh." "Oh, the brood of liars!" cried the tailor, "each as wicked and forgetful of his duty as the other. Ye shall no longer make a fool of me." And quite beside himself with anger, he ran upstairs and belabored the poor young fellow so vigorously with the yard measure that he sprang out of the house. The old tailor was now alone with his goat. Next morning he went down into the stable, caressed the goat, and said, "Come, my dear little animal, I will take thee to feed myself." He took her by the rope and conducted her to green hedges and amongst milfoil and whatever else goats like to eat. "There thou mayest for once eat to thy heart's content," said he to her, and let her browse till evening. Then he asked, "Goat, art thou satisfied?" She replied, "I have eaten so much not a leaf more I'll touch me." "Come home then," said the tailor, and led her into the stable and tied her fast. When he was going away, he turned round again and said, "Well, art thou satisfied for once?" But the goat did not behave the better to him, and cried, "Wherewithal should I be satisfied? Among the graves I leapt about and found no leaves, so went without. Meh." When the tailor heard that, he was shocked, and saw clearly that he had driven away his 3 sons without cause. "Wait, thou ungrateful creature," cried he. "It is not enough to drive thee forth. I will mark thee, so that thou wilt no more dare to show thyself amongst honest tailors." In great haste he ran upstairs, fetched his razor, lathered the goat's head, and shaved her as clean as the palm of his hand. And as the yard measure would have been too good for her, he brought the horsewhip and gave her such cuts with it that she ran away in violent haste. When the tailor was thus left quite alone in his house, he fell into great grief and would gladly have had his sons back again, but no one knew whither they were gone. The eldest had apprenticed himself to a joiner and learnt industriously and indefatigably. And when the time came for him to go traveling, his master presented him with a little table, which had no particular appearance and was made of common wood, but it had one good property. If anyone set it out and said, "Little table, spread thyself," the good little table was at once covered with a clean little cloth, and a plate was there, and a knife and fork beside it, and dishes with boiled meats and roasted meats, as many as there was room for, and a great glass of red wine shone so that it made the heart glad. The young journeyman thought, "With this thou hast enough for thy whole life," and went joyously about the world, and never troubled himself at all, whether an inn was good or bad, or if anything was to be found in it or not. When it suited him, he did not enter an inn at all, but either on the plain, in a wood, a meadow, or wherever he fancied, he took his little table off his back, set it down before him, and said, "Cover thyself," and then everything appeared that his heart desired. At length he took it into his head to go back to his father, whose anger would now be appeased, and who would now willingly receive him with his wishing table. It came to pass that on his way home he came one evening to an inn which was filled with guests. They bade him welcome and invited him to sit and eat with them, for otherwise he would have difficulty in getting anything. "No," answered the joiner, "I will not take the few bites out of your mouths. Rather than that, you shall be my guests." They laughed and thought he was jesting with them. He, however, placed his wooden table in the middle of the room and said, "Little table, cover thyself." Instantly it was covered with food so good that the host could never have procured it, and the smell of it ascended pleasantly to the nostrils of the guests. "Fall to dear friends," said the joiner, and the guests, when they saw that he meant it, did not need to be asked twice, but drew near, pulled out their knives, and attacked it valiantly. And what surprised them the most was that when a dish became empty, a full one instantly took its place of its own accord. The innkeeper stood in one corner and watched the affair. He did not at all know what to say, but thought, "Thou couldst easily find a use for such a cook as that in thy kitchen." The joiner and his comrades made merry until late into the night. At length they laid down to sleep, and the young apprentice also went to bed and set his magic table against the wall. The host's thoughts, however, let him have no rest. It occurred to him that there was a little old table in his lumber room, which looked just like the apprentice's, and he brought it out quite softly and exchanged it for the wishing table. Next morning, the joiner paid for his bed, took up his table, never thinking that he had got a false one, and went his way. At midday, he reached his father, who received him with great joy. "Well, my dear son, what hast thou learnt?" said he to him. "Father, I have become a joiner." "A good trade," replied the old man. "But what hast thou brought back with thee from thy apprenticeship?" "Father, the best thing which I have brought back with me is this little table." The tailor inspected it on all sides and said, "Thou didst not make a masterpiece when thou madst that. It is a bad old table." "But it is a table which furnishes itself," replied the son. "When I set it out and tell it to cover itself, the most beautiful dishes stand on it, and a wine also, which gladdens the heart. Just invite all our relations and friends, they shall refresh and enjoy themselves, for once for the table will give them all they require. When the company was assembled, he put his table in the middle of the room and said, Little table, cover thyself. But the little table did not bestir itself, and remained just as bare as any other table which did not understand language. Then the poor apprentice became aware that his table had been changed, and was ashamed at having to stand there like a liar. The relations, however, mocked him, and were forced to go home without having eaten or drunk. The father brought out his patches again and went on tailoring, but the son went to a master in the craft. The second son had gone to a miller, and had apprenticed himself to him. When his years were over, the master said, As thou hast conducted thyself so well, I give thee an ass of a peculiar kind, which neither draws a cart nor carries a sack. To what use is he put then? Asked the young apprentice. He lets gold drop from his mouth, answered the miller. If thou settest him on a cloth and sayest, Bricklebrit, the good animal will drop gold pieces for thee. That is a fine thing, said the apprentice, and thanked the master, and went out into the world. When he had need of gold, he had only to say Bricklebrit to his ass, and it rained gold pieces, and he had nothing to do but pick them off the ground. Wheresoever he went, the best of everything was good enough for him, and the dearer, the better, for he had always a full purse. When he had looked about the world for some time, he thought, Thou must seek out thy father. If thou goest to him with the gold ass, he will forget his anger and receive thee well. It came to pass that he came to the same public house in which his brother's table had been exchanged. He led his ass by the bridle, and the host was about to take the animal from him and tie him up. But the young apprentice said, Don't trouble yourself. I will take my gray horse into the stable and tie him up myself too, for I must know where he stands. This struck the host as odd, and he thought that a man who was forced to look after his ass himself could not have much to spend. But when the stranger put his hand in his pocket and brought out 2 gold pieces and said he was to provide something good for him, the host opened his eyes wide and ran and sought out the best he could muster. After dinner, the guest asked what he owed. The host did not see why he should not double the reckoning, and said the apprentice must give 2 more gold pieces. He felt in his pocket, but his gold was just at an end. Wait an instant, sir host, said he. I will go and fetch some money. But he took the tablecloth with him. The host could not imagine what this could mean, and being curious, stole after him. And as the guest bolted the stable door, he peeped through a hole left by a knot in the wood. The stranger spread out the cloth under the animal and cried, Bricklebrit, and immediately the beast began to let gold pieces fall, so that it fairly rained down money on the ground. My word, said the host, ducats are quickly coined there. A purse like that is not amiss. The guest paid his score and went to bed, but in the night the host stole down into the stable, led away the master of the mint, and tied up another ass in his place. Early next morning, the apprentice traveled away with his ass, and thought that he had his gold ass. At midday, he reached his father, who rejoiced to see him again, and gladly took him in. What hast thou made of thyself, my son? Asked the old man. A miller, dear father, he answered. What hast thou brought back with thee from thy travels? Nothing else but an ass. There are asses enough here, said the father. I would rather have had a good goat. Yes, replied the son, but it is no common ass, but a gold ass when I say Bricklebrit. The good beast opens its mouth and drops a whole sheet full of gold pieces. Just summon all our relations hither, and I will make them rich folks." "That suits me well," said the tailor, "for then I shall have no need to torment myself any longer with the needle," and ran out himself and called the relations together. As soon as they were assembled, the miller bade them make way, spread out his cloth, and brought the ass into the room. "Now watch," said he, and cried, "Bricklebrit!" But no gold pieces fell, and it was clear that the animal knew nothing of the art, for every ass does not attain such perfection. Then the poor miller pulled a long face, saw that he was betrayed, and begged pardon of the relatives who went home as poor as they came. There was no help for it. The old man had to betake him to his needle once more, and the youth hired himself to a miller. The third brother had apprenticed himself to a turner, and as that is skilled labor, he was the longest in learning. His brothers, however, told him in a letter how badly things had gone with them, and how the innkeeper had cheated them of their beautiful wishing gifts on the last evening before they reached home. When the turner had served his time and had to set out on his travels, as he had conducted himself so well, his master presented him with a sack and said, "There is a cudgel in it." "I can put on the sack," said he, "and it may be of good service to me, but why should the cudgel be in it? It only makes it heavy." "I will tell thee why," replied the master. "If anyone has done anything to injure thee, do but say, 'Out of the sack, cudgel,' and the cudgel will leap forth among the people and play such a dance on their backs that they will not be able to stir or move for a week, and it will not leave off until thou sayest, 'Into the sack, cudgel.'" The apprentice thanked him and put the sack on his back, and when anyone came too near him and wished to attack him, he said, "Out of the sack, cudgel," and instantly the cudgel sprang out and dusted the coat or jacket of one after the other on their backs, and never stopped until it had stripped it off them, and it was done so quickly that before anyone was aware, it was already his own turn. In the evening, the young turner reached the inn where his brothers had been cheated. He laid his sack on the table before him and began to talk of all the wonderful things which he had seen in the world. "Yes," said he, "people may easily find a table which will cover itself a gold ass and things of that kind, extremely good things which I by no means despise. But these are nothing in comparison with the treasure which I have won for myself and am carrying about with me in my sack there." The innkeeper pricked up his ears. "What in the world can that be?" thought he. "The sack must be filled with nothing but jewels. I ought to get them cheap too, for all good things go in threes." When it was time for sleep, the guest stretched himself on the bench and laid his sack beneath him for a pillow. When the innkeeper thought his guest was lying in a sound sleep, he went to him and pushed and pulled, quite gently and carefully, at the sack to see if he could possibly draw it away and lay another in its place. The turner had, however, been waiting for this for a long time, and now, just as the innkeeper was about to give a hearty tug, he cried, "Out of the sack, cudgel!" Instantly, the little cudgel came forth and fell on the innkeeper and gave him a sound thrashing. The host cried for mercy, but the louder he cried, so much more heavily, the cudgel beat the time on his back, until at length he fell to the ground, exhausted. Then the turner said, "If thou dost not give back the table which covers itself, and the gold ass the dance shall begin afresh." "Oh no," cried the host quite humbly, "I will gladly produce everything, only make the accursed kobold creep back into the sack." Then said the apprentice, "I will let mercy take the place of justice, but beware of getting into mischief again." So he cried into the sack Cudgel, and let him have rest. Next morning the turner went home to his father with the wishing table and a gold ass. The tailor rejoiced when he saw him once more, and asked him likewise what he had learned in foreign parts. "Dear father," said he, "I have become a turner." "A skilled trade," said the father. "What hast thou brought back with thee from thy travels?" "A precious thing, dear father," replied the son, "a cudgel in the sack." "What?" cried the father. "A cudgel that's worth thy trouble indeed. From every tree thou can cut thyself one. But not one like this, dear father. If I say, 'Out of the sack, Cudgel,' the cudgel springs out and leads anyone who means ill with me a weary dance, and never stops until he lies on the ground and prays for fair weather. Look you, with this cudgel have I got back the wishing table and the gold ass which the thievish innkeeper took away from my brothers. Now let them both be sent for, and invite all our kinsmen. I will give them to eat and to drink, and will fill their pockets with gold into the bargain." The old tailor would not quite believe, but nevertheless got the relatives together. Then the turner spread a cloth in the room, and led in the gold ass, and said to his brother, "Now, dear brother, speak to him." The miller said, "Bricklebrit," and instantly the gold pieces fell down on the cloth like a thunder shower, and the ass did not stop until every one of them had so much that he could carry no more. Then the turner brought the little table and said, "Now, dear brother, speak to it." And scarcely had the carpenter said, "Table, cover thyself," than it was spread and amply covered with the most exquisite dishes. Then such a meal took place as the good tailor had never yet known in his house, and the whole party of kinsmen stayed together till far in the night, and were all merry and glad. The tailor locked away needle and thread, yard measure and goose, in a press, and lived with his 3 sons in joy and splendor. What, however, has become of the goat who was to blame for the tailor driving out his 3 sons, that I will tell thee. She was ashamed that she had a bald head, and ran to a fox's hole, and crept into it. When the fox came home, he was met by 2 great eyes shining out of the darkness, and was terrified and ran away. A bear met him, and as the fox looked quite disturbed, he said, "What is the matter with thee, brother fox? Why dost thou look like that?" "Ah," answered Redskin, "a fierce beast is in my cave, and stared at me with its fiery eyes." "We will soon drive him out," said the bear, and went with him to the cave and looked in. But when he saw the fiery eyes, fear seized on him likewise. He would have nothing to do with the furious beast, and took to his heels. The bee met him, and as she saw that he was ill at ease, she said, "Bear, thou art really pulling a very pitiful face. What has become of all thy gaiety?" "It is all very well for thee to talk," replied the bear. "A furious beast with staring eyes is in Redskin's house, and we can't drive him out." The bee said, "Bear, I pity thee. I am a poor weak creature whom thou wouldst not turn aside to look at, but still I believe I can help thee." She flew into the fox's cave, lighted on the goat's smoothly shorn head, and stung her so violently that she sprang up crying, "May, may," and ran forth into the world as if mad, and to this hour no one knows where she has gone.